All right, hey guys, happy Halloween. In this video, we're going to build out our drum machine that we started building this week in class. We're going to do some simple modifications to this. This is not going to be a crazy extensive lesson plan. We're going to take it easy this weekend. But I just want to get a little bit of visuals in on this program. So let's go ahead and dive right into this. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the drums project that we created here, and you can see here that we went through and we did our preload. We have this base URL and we loaded all of our sounds into a sound array, and then we went down here and we have all these conditional statements where we play different sounds. One thing I want to do is I want to add a little bit of a kind of like an instruction to this screen here that we'll tell users like what the heck to do. So I'm going to go ahead and put in our draw function, I'm going to put a little text area here. So right at the bottom here, I'm going to go ahead and let's just define some colors here, and we'll define maybe our text alignment. And text alignment we're going to make center, and we'll make, I think, bottom will be fine. All right. So that'll text align the center and the bottom of the screen, and then we're going to go ahead and say text, and we'll give them give a little press ASDF, right? And then we'll position this. Whoop, and then we'll position this in the center using the X and Y coordinates here. So height divided by 2. Actually, no, we're going to make this not divided by 2. We'll make it -10. And this should give us a little ASDF there. I'm going to make the background black here so we can see that a little better. And I'm going to move a little fast here. You guys can slow this down if you'd like. And now we see this little ASDF. So now users know what to hit, but we still don't have any actual output yet. Let's go ahead and we're gonna create a little array of shapes. So we're gonna use another array to do this, and this is going to allow us to manage a bunch of different shapes. So up here at the top, I'm gonna say let shapes equal. We're going to do the same exact thing. We're working out our ability to create these lists, right? These arrays. So we're going to have a list of sounds and we're going to have a list of shapes. Now, when we actually play a sound right now, we are directly calling sounds.play, which is the first introduction to this idea of an object, right? We want to do a little bit more now than just play a sound. We want to also render a shape and, manage this idea of shapes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, all the way at the bottom here, past all the closing curly brackets, I'm going to create our own function called play sound. And what play sound is going to do is it's going to take an index, and we'll take in a color as well. I'll just call it col for now. Awesome. So now, what we can simply do here is we can take this input index, which is going to be this index here, the index to the sound, and we can achieve the same exact thing that we did in the sounds by just simply saying sounds sub index dot play. Now, we can take this and we can essentially replace all of these calls with play sound. So if I say play sound here and I give it the index of 0, and we'll just give it a color red for now, and then we do the same exact thing for all of these, but we're going to increment the index just like we did in our array here. And maybe we'll make these different colors. So I'll make it yellow. We'll make this blue. We're not using these inputs yet, but we will soon. And then we'll make this green. Now, at this point, if we hit play here, we should have the same exact result, right? Now, all we did was we moved this code into its own function. What does that do for us? That gives us the capability now to basically write a bunch of other functionality within this without duplicating our efforts, right? If we did this all inside these conditional statements, we'd have to duplicate all the code underneath it to draw some type of geometry to the screen. We don't want to repeat ourselves because we're lazy programmers, so let's not do that. So let's go ahead and now create a shape. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a shape and we're going to put it on top of this list that we called shapes. So I'm going to say let x is equal to, and we'll make x equal to the center of the screen plus some random value. So we're just kind of placing a shape on the screen randomly, but towards the center of the screen, right? So we're starting in the center and then we're offsetting it by some random value, let's say plus or minus 50, right? And we'll do the same exact thing. I'm going to copy that line and paste it here. And we'll do the same exact thing for y. And instead of that, we'll say height. Right, same exact kind of random but center focused rendering here. Right, so I'm gonna say kind of center position, right? It's centered, but not really. We have this randomness that'll make it a little bit more lively. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna push the idea of a shape. This is our first look at creating our own objects. And I'm doing this subtly, right? There's a new syntax to this. But we're doing this. This is called an object literal. So we're going to take the shapes list and we're going to do dot push, open parentheses, and then open and close curlies. So this syntax is new. These curly brackets are what's defining objects, or an object in this case. And we're putting information inside this object we call properties. So we're going to have a couple properties. We're going to have the x position, which is just going to be the x position we defined here, the y position, and we'll give it a size, maybe. Let's see how this works. We'll give it a RGB value. So we'll say, I don't want to, actually, I'm just going to give it a color. And then we'll give it the col here, because we're going to give this a straight string color, which is fine. And then we'll give it an alpha, because we're going to modify this alpha so it fades out. So we'll start it at full alpha here. You got to make sure you're putting commas at the end of these. And now here, all we're doing is we're pushing this information into a single index on this array. So you can think of every single piece of information in this list comprises these 5 pieces of information. So if we do something like this, a console.log shapes at the end of this call, and we hit play here, and we look at our console, and I hit a key, we're going to see this object, and inside of this object, well, this is going to be the array of shapes. Inside of this, sub-0 has an object that has all of the information that we just pushed on it. So the x and y values, the size, the color, and the alpha. All right, if I hit now another key, we should get another one. Now we have 2 shapes on the array with a sub-1, and that's our green color. Awesome. So now we have the information we need in order for us to actually render something to the screen. So how are we going to do that? Now, inside of our draw function here, this is where we can start to draw stuff. So this is going to illustrate the power of arrays combined with loops. So we're going to be able to loop over all the shapes and then draw the shapes that are in the actual array. So what we're going to do here is we're going to loop. We're going to say for, and we're going to say let I equal to, and we're going to start at the end of the shapes array. So we're going to say shapes.length. Okay? So we're saying shapes.length -1. So we're starting at the end of the list, which is a little different from what we've learned so far. And we're going to say, we're going to loop as long as I is greater than or equal to 0. And then we're going to decrement I. So I minus minus. Awesome. So we're starting at the end and we're working our way back. And then we're going to define a variable called s. And we're going to store within this s the shapes sub I. So we're just taking all of that information, the information that we had here, and we're just storing it temporarily into this variable s. This is going to enable us to use this information now to do certain things, right? So And notice how we dynamically index this array here. This is super important because we're now looping through this list in an automated fashion, and we're going and grabbing the information from the given index that we're at in the loop. So this enables us to not have to rewrite code over and over again for each index, and we can have many, many, many items in this list, and this loop will just go over all of them, right? So now let's go ahead and define our fill. Our fill is going to use the color in this shape, which is stored in S. So we could simply say s.color, and that's going to fill to the color that we set when we filled out that object. This is all getting a little abstract, so I don't anticipate you guys to be like, yeah, this is super clear. I'm kind of doing this quick. We're going to spend a lot more time on learning this stuff in the coming weeks, but this is kind of a quick intro and hopefully get your muscle memory going for doing this stuff. So now let's go ahead and we're going to use ellipses. We love ellipses in this class. And I'm going to draw the ellipse at the x position of this shape, which is s.x, and the y position, which is s.y. And we're going to use the size, which is s.size. Notice how we're just using all of the values that are inside of this object, which is inside the index of this array. What? Okay, let's keep it moving. So let's make this a little more dynamic. We're going to actually, in this loop, we're going to modify the size of the shape. So we're going to say s.size plus equal 3. And then s.alpha minus equal 5. The goal here is we want the geometry to get bigger over time and fade out, right? So let's see what happens. And now if we say, we want to also, when it fully fades out, we don't want to use it anymore. We don't want it in the list. So we're going to take it off the list. Let's see how we could do that. We're going to say if the alpha is less than or equal to 0, so we can't see it at this point, right? Then let's go ahead and take the shapes array and splice, so dot splice, this index and only one of them off the list. So this is going to remove the shape from the list. Okay, we're using a lot of object-oriented stuff here. Anytime you see a dot and you're accessing a function, we are calling into a method on an object. So this is like a tool on an object. Think of like an object like a Swiss Army knife, and we have all these tools that we can go ahead and whip out and use for different occasions. An array in and of itself in JavaScript is an object. So it gives us all these functionalities like a Swiss Army knife to be able to use things like splicing things, removing things from the list. So awesome. So that is that. And I think that's all we really need to make this happen. So let's see, guys. Let's see if we have this play sound. It adds the shape. We don't need to console log this anymore. And let's go ahead and hit play. Now, if I hit a key, boom! It's not really fading out. Okay, all right. It's looking good, but we don't have a fade out. Let's see what's going on with that. So size.alpha minus s.alpha minus that. You know why? Because the color that we're using, we're not breaking apart the color. So that's the problem with that. We need to break out the color to be able to use the alpha value. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to go ahead, instead of doing this, which I kind of took a lazier approach here by just passing in just a straight string color. Instead of saying color, we're going to say R, and we'll say col.r. And we're going to go ahead and do this for, actually, we're going to do this. We're going to get each component here. So we're going to use this red, RG, green, which these are functions in P5 that allow us to pull the green out and the blue out and the red out of this variable. So now we just broke the color into its 3 core parts, and now we have this alpha. So now we have to see how we can pass this color in. Instead of doing this, we're going to say color, and this was red, right? So we're going to make it red. So we'll say 25500, and then we'll do the same exact thing for all of these. So I'm going to copy this I should know my primary colors, right? I don't know if that's going to make yellow. What's yellow? Let's see. Let's see what that produces. So let's make this. I'm just kind of randomizing some of these colors here. And we'll see how it comes out. I'll turn the red channel off on that one. Okay, so now we're passing in these colors, then we're using these functions to pull out just the color components we care about there. And now up here, we should be able to, instead of saying s.color, we're going to go ahead and give it its pieces. So s.r, s.g, s.b, and then s.alpha. And I think this is going to do a lot for this. This is going to allow us to really get a nice little effect here. So let's give this a shot. We'll hit play. And now, nice. Should get some like 80s stuff for my wig, you know, like 80s. Nice. Awesome. That is working well. Excellent. I will stop there. You know, I definitely went through a lot of stuff pretty quickly here. Just to recap real quick what we did. Simply put, all we did was we created a list of shapes. We abstracted out this idea of playing a sound to our own function called play sound. And we did the same exact thing with our sounds array by playing it from an index that we input. And then we created the idea of a shape using this object notation. And then inside of the draw function, we looped over all of these shapes and then drew them to the screen. And then we modified certain properties of them to make them larger as time goes on. And then if they are faded out 100%, we took them off the list. So every time the user hits a button, we put a shape on the list, we start animating and drawing it to the screen, and once it fades away, we remove it and it's gone forever and we don't have to worry about it. Whoop, as I break my desk. Okay guys, so play along with this. Try to get this to work. Don't worry if it's not working 100%. Submit something. And if you have any other spin you can put on it, try to get a little creative. I'd love to see what you guys got going on. All right, I'll see you Monday. Have a good weekend and happy Halloween.